Somewhere on a hill outside King's Landing, a few thousand men are walking toward you. Ragged clothes, mismatched armor, farm tools sharpened into weapons. Some of them have a 7-pointed star cut or branded into their skin. Behind them ride knights in silvered plate and star-crested helms. Men who traded titles and land for a god. And to be fair, it's one of the coolest images in Westeros. Nobody is paying these people. They just showed up. Okay. Who's feeding them? Because that isn't a small question. Feed 30,000 men badly, and you haven't raised an army. You've built a famine with a holy symbol on it, mostly aimed at the people who fed it. So let's do this properly. We're going to count their bread, price their scalps, and follow their carts. Then work out how long a holy army lasts before arithmetic finds it. Because the true enemy of the Faith Militant is never Maegor. It isn't Balerion either, it's a cart. Now, I don't want to make the lazy version of this argument. The lazy version is peasants with axes lose to knights. That isn't true and it isn't interesting. A poleaxe in the hands of a furious farmer opens a knight like a letter. And there's a second lazy version that's even worse, that the faith is poor. The faith is enormously rich. Chapter houses, septs in every village, land, tithes, and pious lords quietly sending grain. That isn't a weakness. That's a continent-wide network. The problem is the shape of that network. Devotion is distributed. Armies are concentrated. The faith can inspire 30,000 men in a season. The hard part is inspiring 30 tons of bread to arrive in one field every morning. So let's build the model carefully. Cannon gives us anchors. Wat the Hewer gathers 9,000 poor fellows in the southern reach. Sir Horace Hill raises 13,000 more in the Westerlands. He picks up 200 mounted warriors' sons from the Stony Sept chapter house, plus the levies of about a dozen lords. Both sides at the Great Fork field over 20,000 men. That's 22,000 poor fellows across two hosts, though not all at the same moment. So 30,000 isn't a standing army. It's a stress test, a campaign-wide upper bound. And if the faith can't supply the upper bound, everything underneath it is just a slower version of the same problem. Food is test 1. A man walking all day with an axe needs roughly 3,000 calories. That's labor, not luxury. Let's give them 2,500 because hunger is sort of the brand. 30,000 times 2,500 is 75 million calories a day, every day. War or peace, faith or doubt. Stretch that across a year and you get about 27 billion calories, which means nothing to you, so let's translate it. That's roughly 50 million Big Macs. The 7 are not going to drop off 50 million Big Macs. In bread, using the 2-pound daily ration that fed a lot of medieval armies, that's 30 tons of bread a day. Turn it into farmland and you're looking at something like 1,200 working farms, plowed, harvested, milled, and baked, doing nothing else all year for one campaign. If you're enjoying watching a holy war get taken apart by a supply cart, like and subscribe. Apparently this is what I do with my life now. Anyway, here's what turns bad into fatal. Every one of those men came from somewhere, and somewhere was a field. Medieval yields swing hard with soil, weather, and luck, so I won't pretend to a precise figure, but the direction is never in doubt. A man who leaves the plow for the star doesn't only start eating, he stops producing. He flips from a plus to a minus in a single afternoon. Do that tens of thousands of times and you haven't just fed an army, you've removed the labor that was feeding everyone else. The Faith Militant manufactures a share of the hunger it then marches against. But hunger isn't what kills them first. We'll come back to that. So food is testing. Test 2 is money, and here the faith looks formidable. The crown owes it nearly 1 million gold dragons. That debt is so enormous that Cersei buys an armed religious movement using nothing but forgiveness. The faith writes off what it's owed, blesses Tommen, and gets its swords back. She doesn't fund them, she simply agrees to stop owing them. But wealth is not the same thing as supply. The faith's income is tithes, rents, donations, and the nervous copper of frightened people. It arrives in small amounts in 1,000 places across an entire year. That's a superb way to run 7 kingdoms of septs. It's a terrible way to feed one field. A collection plate can buy swords. It cannot deliver breakfast. Test 3 is movement, and here cannon does half my work. Wat's host has no cavalry at all, not fewer horses. None. That doesn't make them blind, because infantry can scout perfectly well. It means a thinner screen, slower reconnaissance, and far less time to react when something goes wrong. They're also slow. 20,000 men marching 4 abreast make a column nearly 3 miles long before you add a single cart, and they need carts because bread doesn't walk. 20,000 men eat about 20 tons of it a day, and an ox cart hauls roughly 1,000 pounds. That's 40 loaded carts arriving daily, forever, plus oxen that eat as well. Give a supply train enough distance, and it consumes its own cargo. The wagon becomes the meal, so this army can't scatter and can't stray far from grain. It has to sit near barns, which means anyone hunting it only has to check the barns, which is exactly what happens. At Stonebridge, Watts 9,000 are caught completely out of position by 6 lordly armies. Not outfought, outpositioned. And at the Great Fork of the Blackwater, 13,000 poor fellows are standing in one place with hundreds of allies when Balerion arrives. Ask why they're all in one place. The answer isn't strategy, it's catering. You can't scatter across the riverlands and still be fed by patronage. You go where the granaries and the friendly lords are. The economics parks them in one field. The dragon just does the paperwork. Maegor understands this, and he prices it. He puts a bounty on them, a gold dragon for the scalp of a warrior's son, a silver stag for a poor fellow. By the exchange rate people generally use, that's 200 odd poor fellows to one knight. The crown has published a price list for holy men. That isn't a war crime, that's a pricing structure, and he collects. In 46 AC, he brings 2,000 skulls home to King's Landing, and claims they belong to the Faith Militant. Plenty of people suspect he simply found 2,000 convenient peasants. Now, the thing that kills them before hunger does. 30,000 armed men with no wages, fragmented leadership, and a mandate from heaven do not starve politely. They forage. Forage is a lovely word meaning you take a family's winter grain in autumn and call it a donation. And the moment that starts, the network dies. The tithes stop. The septs stop being loved and start being visited. The faith's genuine supply line is affection, and affection is spent faster than bread. Every barn they empty converts a donor into an enemy. At this point, someone is already typing. The Knights Templar were real. Holy war. Vows of poverty. 2 centuries. Yes, and look closely at what the Templars actually built. Not enthusiasm. Estates, mills, ports, granaries, and a financial network that moved money across a continent. Individual brothers took vows of poverty. The order kept a rent roll and a chain of houses that could resupply a march. That's the whole difference. The Faith Militant runs on patronage. This lord's grain, that Sep's collection. A chapter house here. Goodwill there. Patronage sustains an insurgency beautifully for years. It collapses the moment you gather 20,000 men in one place and ask it for a daily delivery. You can run a militant order for 2 centuries on a rent roll. You cannot run one on a collection plate. And the Templars still ended badly. Arrested in 1307 by a king who wanted their wealth and their independence gone, and who also happened to owe them money. In Westeros, a queen with the same debt problem goes the other direction entirely. Cersei doesn't burn her creditor, she arms it. Then it arrests her, which is, in fairness, the more thorough version of the mistake. And before the verdict, the half we've been ignoring. The warrior's sons are the expensive half. 200 ride to the Great Fork, and mounted knights never travel alone. Squires, remounts, grooms, and access to armorers, because plate polished bright as a mirror is a maintenance contract rather than a possession. Rust is faster than Balerion, and it never has to land. Say 3 horses a night. That's 600 animals eating 15 pounds of hay a day each, 4.5 tons of hay every morning, plus roughly 5,000 gallons of water for the horses alone. All of it supporting 200 men, so the holiest cavalry in the world requires a payroll. Smiths, grooms, oilcloth, hay, and someone whose entire job is stopping God's knights from turning orange. They renounce property and instantly acquired overhead. The 7 work in mysterious ways, and one of them is logistics. So does the Faith Militant make sense? As a movement, completely. As a rebellion that survives 6 years, absolutely. Because a civil war hands them somebody else's supply lines to live on. As a field army that can concentrate, march, and feed itself for about 1 harvest. After that, it isn't an army, it's a weather event. And look at how it truly ends. Not with fire. Maegor burns 13,000 of them and settles nothing at all. It ends with Jaehaerys offering amnesty. The Faith trades its swords for royal protection, and thousands of armed men quietly work out that home has become safer than the road. In economic terms, the rebellion isn't defeated, it's outbid. Even the exiles prove the point. 2 years into the new reign, Faith Militant sent to the Wall rise against the Night's Watch, trying to carve out lordships of their own. Lord Walton Stark rides north and finishes them. Armed men with no land and no wages will always go looking for both. That isn't a crisis of faith. That's a budget. Devotion arrives in a season. Bread has to arrive every morning. Thanks for watching. If there's another beautiful fantasy institution you'd like me to feed into a supply chain until it screams, put it in the comments. And everyone still here has officially earned 1 honorary cartload of grain. It will not arrive. That is more or less the entire point of this channel.